Welcome into the Stack Shack Sports Show. Today we're continuing another day, another team. We're going to be talking about the Jets as we work through our AFC East. We did the Bills and the Dolphins yesterday. We're doing the Jets today, and we'll wrap this all up with the Patriots tomorrow. So, Jets, really a disappointing season last year. As I pull up the key additions, key losses, and all of this information here. 2023, 7-10, didn't make the playoffs. Their defense was ranked number one. They had the number one ranked defense by PFF, but they also had the dead last offense by PFF's rankings there. So really an interesting team to see them over the course of the season. That defense kept them in a lot of games, but they didn't win as many as they needed to, and that offense was absolutely atrocious. Lots of different quarterbacks, lots of different attempts at making something happen, but it just never did for the Jets. Again, this is the season that started with a lot of promise, a lot of hope with Aaron Rodgers, the big offseason acquisition. He leaves Green Bay. This is going to be this big deal. The Jets are Super Bowl contenders, right? A lot of high expectations getting thrown around by Jets media, by Jets fans. They were riding high. It was electric. It's the first game of the season. Here comes Aaron Rodgers out of the tunnel. They get the ball first, and something that we had been worried about, let's be real, we've been worried about it, their offensive line. It was not good the year before with Zach Wilson. And, you bring in Aaron Rodgers, but you didn't magically solve the offensive line situation. And incoming Aaron Rodgers, a little older player, first 3 plays of the game, he's getting hit, he's getting tackled, he's getting pulled down, he's getting pressure immediately. Something we had heard about in camp was an issue, and it just became a bigger issue once the season started. So he gets hurt first series of the season, knocked out, he's done for the year, and they had to scrounge around, with the rest of their quarterback options. And they kind of quarterback by committee, tried different players, all to scrape away 7 wins. Didn't make the playoffs. This season, to me, is the Robert Saleh, we're going to find out, right? Like, I think he's really on the chopping block if they have a bad year. He gets a pass for last year. He didn't have Aaron Rodgers. That's a big difference, right? You prep the entire season, the playbook, everything's set up. Nathaniel Hackett did not coach real well, but, he was brought in to work with Aaron Rodgers, and it just didn't work out that way. So if we look at the key players they lost, I'm highlighting, they did lose Mekhi Becton as well, tackle, right? A player that has had some ups and downs. I don't think really met the expectations of where he was drafted by the Jets, but key additions, they brought in some tackles to hopefully shore up that offensive line. But on defense, that number 1 ranked defense, losing some big players. Quentin Jefferson, solid player on that defensive line. Jordan Whitehead, a beast down there at safety. And edge on Bryce Huff. I mean, and that's not all the players, but I think those are 3 key defensive positions that are going to be tough to replace. Now, they made some additions on offense, and maybe you could say, hey, this is the number 1 ranked defense last season by PFF. Robert Saleh, head coach, leans defense, right? He's a defensive coach, somebody who hopefully should be able to do more with less, right? And so I think they looked at it and said, all right, our defense is really, really good. Let's let some of these players go, and let's bring in some solid offensive players. And they did that. First pick of the draft, a fantastic tackle. And then they brought in Tyron Smith. And I think that was actually a good fit because Tyron Smith, amazing player, Dallas Cowboys longtime tackle there. I mean, you look at Dak's stats when Smith plays versus doesn't. There's a difference there. And so he makes a huge impact there at the tackle position. But he is a little older, and he has had some injury issues over the last couple of years. And so to pair him up with this youngster who hopefully should not have as many injury issues. Great pick out of Penn State. And then kind of a sleeper pick, I think. Jordan Travis. Now, how well will he be able to... I mean, will he even be able to suit up this season? We don't know. His injury at the end of last year was brutal. But might have been a bit of a steal. Down there, I think he was picked round 5. To bring him in as potentially a future a fantastic electric player out of Florida State. You know you have Aaron for, this year, and I think he's still under contract next year as well. So you got Aaron for maybe 2 more years. But Aaron's getting older. How's he going to come back from this pretty brutal injury? Having somebody like Jordan Travis on the depth chart, I think it was a sneaky, great pick. A player who, had he not been injured, would probably be going much higher in the draft. Ends up going to the Jets in round 5. An absolute steal, I think, for the quality of player he is. And yes, his injury was pretty egregious, right? His leg is pretty messed up after that. But we've seen a lot of players come back from these injuries. I mean, heck, Aaron Rodgers is coming back from this pretty brutal Achilles injury. So it's not unheard of to come back from some of these leg injuries in the NFL anymore. And so to get a player of that caliber in round 5, I think that's fantastic. Obviously, going into next season, the offense just has to play better, and hopefully it will under Aaron Rodgers if you're a Jets fan. Some important games to look out for. Week 1 versus the 49ers. It's at 49ers. Aaron Rodgers is a West Coast kid, grew up in Northern California, right? Played community college at Butte College. San Francisco 49ers. I mean, he's a fan. There's pictures of him in jerseys as a kid. I think it's an amazing storyline to see that matchup and see what the Jets can do. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt. Now, if you're going to be pessimistic about this, you might have some concerns. 49ers, Bosa, Warner, I mean, they can get after the quarterback and, maybe a suspect offensive line. Tyron Smith, I think, is just going to have to play a great game. That's what it's going to have to be. And then my key is, how do they end the season, right? Can Aaron Rodgers stay healthy? Can Tyron Smith stay healthy, right? What does this young kid do? But they end in pretty rough 3 games, right? Week 16 versus the Rams. Then in week 17, they got to go play in Buffalo. And then they got to play Miami. Now, thankfully, Rams and Miami, those are home games, so it should be better, right? Miami in the cold, up there in Jet Stadium, it could be cold. Week 18, that could be a benefit for them. But those are 3 teams that, if you look over the last few years, have been playoff teams, Super Bowl team contenders. And in a situation where, if it's coming down to the wire, if you're a Jets fan, you don't want it to be close. You don't want to have to be, oh man, we got to win our last 3 games to make the playoffs, because you're probably not going to. It's really tough to win those 3 games in a row. That at Buffalo game is just rough. So we'll have to see. I think those are the 3 games I'm most interested in watching at the end of the season. Where are the Jets? What's their record? If you're a Jets fan, you'd probably like to have playoffs maybe clinched, or at least, maybe only have to win one of those 3, because that is a tough ending stretch against some historically really good teams. I mean, we anticipate that the Rams are going to be solid, that the Bills are going to be solid, that Miami's going to be solid. The other thing that you're looking at here is 2 of those are division games. So if you're looking at the top of the standings, those 2 games are probably going to matter a whole lot as far as who is winning the division, getting that guaranteed, position in the playoffs, who's potentially, locking up home field advantage. We talked yesterday about how important that could be for Miami, since they don't play well in the cold, or at least haven't yet played well in the cold. Tua's never won a game in that colder weather. those are going to be rough games, and the Bills and Miami are probably both going to be ready to go in those games, and I think they're going to have huge major impacts. So be on the lookout for those last three. Obviously, week one, we're just going to be really interested to see, what do they look like? What does the defense look like? 49ers, Kyle Shanahan coming out. I mean, week one, he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve. And so how can the defense play with these losses of a safety, a defensive lineman, an edge rusher, and a few other players as well? How does that defense, is it the same form that they were last season? And then, how does Aaron Rodgers look? Finally playing, hopefully, a full game in a Jets uniform. That's what we're going to be on the lookout for. If you're a Jets fan, let me know. I think Jordan Travis is maybe one of the underrated and not talked about enough. It really isn't talked about enough that they were able to pick him up in the 5th round. Not going to be, a huge impact this season, right? It's not going to probably make a difference this year, but moving forward in years to come, that could be the future. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the offensive line? Do you think it can finally protect Aaron Rodgers? Those are some of the questions I think we all have. I'd love to hear some Jets fans in the comments down below. Tell us what you think, and we'll see you tomorrow to wrap up the AFC East.